Welcome back to the Price of Success podcast. I'm your host, Chris Farrell. On today's episode, I have with me Ty-Shane Howell. Today's episode is a wake-up call, okay? Ty-Shane Howell went from childhood trauma to foster care to years in prison, including a 23-hour-a-day lockdown, to now becoming a sought-after AI entrepreneur who built a one-man, six-figure business by himself. Ty has incredible lessons on purpose to pain to personal responsibility. And trust me, this is not just a feel-good story. This is a radical redemption story. So look, if you have felt victimized or stuck or overwhelmed by your past, this conversation is for you. Welcome to The Price of Success, the podcast where we tell the whole truth about what it costs to build the business and life God created you for. We're here to remind you that conditions are never perfect. Success always comes with a price, and you're not the only one paying it. Let's get started. All right, Ty. So I've been following your stuff, man. And let me just say, there are not many voices like yours out on social media. I mean, you don't sugarcoat a thing, my man, and you don't play it safe. You completely speak the truth, even when it might sting people a little bit. And dare I say, you're a little bit savage on social media, right? Maybe intentionally on purpose, maybe not, right? But dude, bottom line is, I love having people on the podcast that share tidbits of their story. But I love to have them on the podcast, knowing that there's so much more than what you're posting. And so, as we kick this conversation off, man, it's about the real, it's about the raw, it's about the price of success, the sacrifices you made, all the things nobody sees, man. And so, first and foremost, man, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I look forward to it.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. So, all right. One of my favorite questions to get started with the podcast is this, man. I want to rewind a little bit, right? Because, dude, you have a story, and before the wins, before the success, as you know, Ty the AI guy, and all of the things in the making, man. Before you were the guy that everyone was like, "Yeah, man, you're amazing, you're killing it, dude." Who was Ty before all the wins, before all the successes?
Same guy, different demons, different battles, same heart, not as refined. You know, life is just like mountains, and you climb one mountain. I thought once I overcame addiction that like I made it. No, that's that was just the first hurdle. We got more mountains, and so the difference now is I was lost, I was broken, I was hopeless, I was purposeless. I had no clarity, I had no direction, I had no understanding of life. And that's where like purpose is born through pain. I know it's like a cliche thing to say, but if you look at people's passions and you look at people's purposes, it's always, always rooted in some sort of pain, some sort of, I don't even want to say tragedy, but like something that negatively impacted their life or the life of a loved one or something, really close to home. And so everything now is basically wouldn't exist without those struggles, those demons, those, failures. But when I say failure, it's like some things you have to get stung 10 times. Some things you only got to get stung one time, but you don't really know until you get stung. And then from then on, you might move a little quicker, by sting 3, you're like, okay, I'm done with this. And so, the biggest difference, just to kind of compound on that is, childhood trauma. A lot of, how should I say it? Actually, all of our behaviors are rooted in our child selves. And those years of our lives are basically what are navigating now. And when you move in life and you don't understand the correlation between that version of yourself and who you are today, it can run you amok. It can run you right into the ground. And when you run away from the darkness, you're actually running away from the light. And so you have to run into the darkness, and there's this little beacon of light inside the darkness, And so, like, that's where I would say where Christ lies. And that's where you can be reborn, rebirthed, redeemed, but you have to face the darkness. And so I was running away from the darkness for the longest time. And it's just like running in a circle, dog chasing his tail. And it wasn't until I faced the demons, faced the traumas, and it's a God thing. Like the events in my story, definitely a God thing. Meeting my birth mom, getting that closure. Literally, my entire perspective of my whole life got flipped upside down, and I'm like, oh wow, because I got Forsaken tattooed on my knuckles in prison.
Okay.
And come to find out, the very things that I believed made me forsaken, which is like a synonym for abandoned, etc. If you're not familiar with the word, are actually the greatest acts of mercy and love that have ever been shown in my life. And so being taken away from my birth mom at age of 4 was nothing against her or myself. That was an act of love, and that was God. And so a child cannot comprehend their experiences. A child does not have the aptitudes to, effectively, translate and internalize anything they experience. And so I had to sift through that and go through a lot of pains. And then I had to go on a God journey. And, when I met my birth mom, literally everything flipped upside down. And I got closure. I started to see God in everything. And so, just, that's when the old Ty started to die and the new me started to be born. And it was literally, that was the inception point, was, going to the root of the childhood traumas by meeting my birth mom face to face, 25 years later after being taken away from her. And so she was only 13 when I was born. She raised me from 13 to 17 on her own. Birth mom abandoned her. I'm a rape baby. And so it's a really dark story. And it's, she's a victim. And then I was becoming a victim of a victim. Birth little sister died when she was 2 years old. And then that's when they took me away. But, it was a child taking care of a child. And so I internalized those experiences negatively, when in reality, being taken away was actually what's given me hope and given me, potential of a future. And so it's just wild. It wasn't until I was 29 years old, man, that I was able to see that. And it came at a price. It came at a heavy price, but God is good. And, miracles can happen. So that's kind of the gist and the overview.
Dude, you just took everybody on this roller coaster. It was like, oh my gosh, what is like, oh my goodness, man. Like there's so much here. There's so much here, right? Okay, so you say you're born to a 13-year-old victim of rape. And then she raised you for 4 years and your sister passed away. And so you were taken away, right? And then from there, what happened? Did you go into the system?
Yeah, for 2 years, I was in the foster system, and then I got
Okay.
adopted. And so, so I got adopted at 6, and I basically fell into the statistics. Like, if you look at the adoption statistics of anybody 6 and older, they're absolutely terrible. Like, they're usually a lot underneath that surface. And so, like, one of my future books it's going to be called "Love Is Not Enough." And so that pretty much sums up my entire adopted parents' experience with me. It doesn't matter how much you love someone who is broken that you adopt, that's not going to fix them. And it wasn't until God intervened and took me on that journey, tended to my childhood traumas. The therapy as a kid didn't help. None of that stuff helped. I had to face that. I had to, in real life, like I actually had to face my birth mom. And so, and it's wild because I walked in the same footsteps as my birth mom, even though I had no recollection of her. I didn't know her, and obviously, my childhood self knew her, but my conscious self didn't know her. And so it's really wild when you look at like the genetic paths, and yeah, so I went same drugs, same everything as she did when I went into addiction. And so that's a I guess that's another branch for another day. But
Yeah, man.
yeah, so yeah.
Wow. Wow. I mean, dude, like I said, there's so much there, and it just makes me think of people who would be listening to this and say, like, I grew up with a pretty hard life. I mean, we practically have silver spoons in our mouths in comparison to your story, many of us. And so, first off, let me just ask you, how hard is it for you to deal with people who live as victims with the story that you have?
I did the same thing, man. I've been a victim in my own stories, and that's part of running away from the darkness. Um, I've been there too, man. We're all there. I still do it. I have to capture myself. Just the most humble way that I can put it is what's big to me is as big as what's big to you. And God doesn't give us anything that we can't handle. One of my biggest victim, things that I had to face is I went to federal prison for someone else's charges. I was indicted based off of false federal testimonies. And so my conviction in the federal system is literally 100% I'm innocent of. And it's one of my biggest barriers today. And I lost years of my life because of it. And for
Wow.
so many years, I played victim to that. But then the principle of extreme ownership, and how do I say this? The principle of extreme ownership is we're all responsible for everything that happens to us because we have control of how we respond. And so, like, when we get into this whole discussion right here of like all of that, like, people are given what they can handle. Anything on your plate is not too much. Even if it breaks you, it's building you. And when we are the little chess pieces, because we have this little unidimensional vision, God's playing the big chess. Like the people that were involved in that story, they're sober now. They got their lives together now. And look, I got my life together too. So, like, everything worked out for the greater good in the end. In the moment, we don't understand, why me? Like, how could this happen to me? But when you look at how being broken builds you, when you break a bone, it builds back stronger. Like all these experiences, they build us and starting points. We don't pick our starting points. I had to go through pains. So when I look at my story now, like at times I'm like, man, like my number one thought is like, you need to tough it up, man. Like it could be 100 times worse. Like you shouldn't be
Yeah.
complaining about that. At the same time, there's still that piece of what's big to me is as big as what's big to you. Our responses are all chemically driven. So like my cortisol levels could be as high as your cortisol levels, but we are dealing with two completely different things. And to you, what I'm going through may not be as significant as what you're going through, but our bodies are responding as if they are. And so there's that's just a really like eye-opening way to look at everybody's different experiences as we're going through different things, but our chemical, our mental, our psychological, our spiritual, like they're all at the same level.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of where my mind goes with that answer. And that's something I've had to work through just to even be able to answer like that. And I'm not
Yeah.
perfect at any of that. But I always look at people who are going through like cancer, people who have like, people like imagine losing a limb. I'm just saying there's all sorts of things that I'm just like, man, I'm glad that I went through this. I'm glad I went through that because I'd rather pay this price than that price. But that's because
Man.
my prices are familiar to me, just as someone else's prices are familiar to them. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, there's always a reframe around all of these things. And, it's a good opportunity for us all to, learn humility, myself included. And so, yeah, so that's one of my biggest life lessons right now is it's like compassion, empathy, understanding, because once again, if you take the experiences to a chemical level, we're all going through the same things. They just look different on the outside, but inside the battles, the spiritual, the psychological, the chemical, the emotional, they're all basically the same. And it just, you can't see that on the surface. And so, yeah.
So you mentioned we're all going through these chemical battles, right? What's funny is a lot of people would say in the personal growth world, all the answers are found within you. Now, I know you've already alluded on this episode, you've already alluded to like, hey, man, the therapies didn't work, this didn't work, that didn't work. What do you say to someone who's like, oh, Ty, the answers are within you?
Um, I would say I would agree with them
Hmm.
because if we're the drivers and we're the ones moving our legs, then obviously like we are the connectors to the answers. But my rebuttal always would be like God, Christ, whatever your belief is, God, Allah, Buddha. Like I've seen everybody change from, I've seen people from Allah, lives transformed, healed, doing good into the world. I've seen people with universe, lives transformed, doing good into the world. I've seen them all the same outcomes, you know? So the front end belief is different, is no different than the outcome based on what we can tangibly see and the spiritual healing and the evolution of the person as they move towards, you know, self-actualization. And so, I mean, the answers are all within us because only we can make the decision. So I would look at it differently than probably they're looking at it. But that's
Yeah.
because if I don't move my legs and the water is over there, like obviously the answer is within me because I just got to tell my legs to move over to the water so I can get a drink, you know?
Yeah.
So that's probably not how they're looking at it, but that's how I would interpret that. And so
Yeah.
it's just like with faith, it's just like with belief, you know, the power of beliefs. That's why, you know, yeah, like it's just one of my biggest things in life is I've just seen everyone with different beliefs get to the same outcome, you know,
Hmm.
same healing, you know, all that kind of a stuff. And so, um, I mean, in a sense, if you don't believe it, you can't receive it. And so it's just like knock and you shall receive. And like if you don't do that, then there's not going to be you know a responsive, you know, action, you know, if we're getting to like
Sure.
physics or whatever. But yeah, so
Sure.
that's sort of how I would answer that.
Sure. Dude, so I want to go back to that later on. We're definitely going to hit back on that a little bit because I have some deeper questions on that. As we keep things moving along here though, um, you know, you just mentioned that you went to federal prison for a crime you did not commit. How much time did you lose? And how much of a mind F was that, man?
So I've done over 7 years. 36 months of that was for federal offenses. When I say I was innocent of the charge, I wasn't innocent. And so
Okay.
like life works for us. I didn't commit that crime, but I was committing other crimes.
Got it.
I was a
Okay.
drug
That's
addict,
fair.
you know, I was a junkie. So like that's why like karma is real, guys. Like anybody watching this, like it doesn't look the same as the output you put into the world. But it comes back to you. There is a balance of positive and negative energy, you know, where they say like, you know, treat others how you want to be treated, type of the golden rule. Like you should really internalize that because it will come back around.
Mm.
And so, yeah. So for me, you know, like I'll never forget when I got the paperwork. Like I refused to testify, and like I got that paperwork, and I was just like, my ex just did this to me, you know. And so like that brings a whole nother slew of problems of like, you know, trust with women, you know, the deep betrayals. And so like how do I say this? Like I've had to like you have to take ownership. Like that's what it all comes down to. I was with people I shouldn't have been with. I was doing things I shouldn't have been doing. What do you expect? You know, if you're at places you shouldn't be, around people you shouldn't be around, doing things that you shouldn't be doing, what do you expect to happen? Like there's nothing good that is going to come out of that. And
Yeah.
so that's been that was probably a good like 5 year battle of mine was not playing victim. And I mean I'm still guilty. I get in on certain things that I'm still processing. different things like life isn't fair. But now it's just more of a like, okay, how can I reframe this? Extreme ownership. It's one of the best principles I've ever learned. I think that if we all just take extreme ownership for things, our lives would get significantly better because now we can't make excuses about it. We can't blame, doesn't matter what the worst experience, in life was, you have control on how you respond to it. And there's something you
Yeah.
did that got you to that inception point. And so, yeah, I mean, I'll just tell you this, prison built me, man. I went into
Mm.
prison as I went into prison as I didn't have much backbone. I was just this like, I was this little like traumatized kid. And prison built me, man. I'll still, yeah, like prison built me, man. I wouldn't be who I am without it. I wouldn't have the voice I have without it. I wouldn't have the, stand for anything or fall for anything mentality. I got a fire in me, man. I witnessed so many travesties, so many, like negligence of human life. The psychological warfare, the sociological warfare, the generational warfare. Over 40% of people incarcerated are former foster youth, and I still ended up in the prison system. And so like this stuff's not real unless you experience it. It's just like all the times I was homeless. It's like now I have this understanding of the homeless problem that you can't get unless you've been homeless. I started college at the Ohio State University from the homeless shelter, smoking crack. And
Oh,
so
dude.
like I'm just saying, like in all these experiences, man, it's like it's almost like God needs you to see things so He can use you for those things, so He can use your voice to help those people. And so that's why, like, pain brings purpose. People who have been through addiction, they have a compassion for helping out, like people who are going through addiction. Look at Jelly Roll, for example. Stuff he's doing with the inmates. The speaking in front of Congress around addiction and fentanyl. Like, if he hadn't been through what he had been through, he wouldn't have the voice that he has, and he couldn't be used as a vessel for those works. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so that's a kind of a long, winded answer.
No, no, not at all, man. Prison built me. I think that's a really I mean, that's some crazy insight there, man. I mean, obviously you would know, and going through the things you went through and saying that it broke you and made you stronger in various ways is man, that's fascinating. That really is, because I think all of us who have never been to prison are just kind of like, "Oh, like, these people go and they're just in this awful place and they're they're broken down and depressed and they don't know what it's like to socially live anymore." And and they're just stuck, right? It's almost like their life is paused until they get out. But 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 you said all the bad things that you saw and all the things you experienced and the ways that you had to grow. Talk about how that ignited you and helped you when you walked out those prison doors, man.
Well, so just so we're aware, 77% of people that step foot in prison will never get out of the system. So that's an important statistic to remember. They have
Yeah.
it as a finely tuned engine, and it's all sociologically premised. They use Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They attach
Mhm.
legislations to safety, security, all of your basic staples of security. They
Yep.
debilitated access. 14,500 is the average income of the first year out of anybody that gets released. So survival, the brain's going to revert back to old people, places, and things just to survive. And then
Scarcity.
obviously,
Yeah.
if you are, if the greatest predictor of trajectory is environment, when you restrict people's access to those staples of security and you force them into unstable environments and into less like socioeconomically, affluent, geographical areas, you're far more likely to get similar outcomes based on where they were before that brought them into the situation in the first place. So that's just an important thing to remember because even for
Sure.
me, it didn't build me until I had the mindset for it to build me. In the moment, it wasn't building me. In the moment, it was destroying me. But even in those moments, there were moments that built me, but it's the mindset afterwards that, has basically given it the driving force in my life. And so like for example, I mean, so obviously there's the mindset post release where it's like, okay, I get to label my experiences. I get to choose how this is going to impact my future decisions. I get to choose, how I'm going to psychologically index this. Is it a bad thing or is it a good thing? And you can change those at any time. That's the thing. You can turn all the tragedies, all the negatives into positives with one conscious decision. And so like that the number one thing that prison did for me is when I was in I did 1 year of 23-hour day lockdown. And so I came out of my cell for an hour a day for an entire year. And then the next year was 21-hour day lockdown. And so the first 90 days of that 23-hour day lockdown, I broke. Like I literally, this is brain marked. I'll never forget it. Staring out my little tiny window, and I'm like, I can't beat this system. I can't stay clean. I make a mistake. I lose everything. It's just like if you have a dog and you smack them on the nose every time they go to the food bowl, how many times you got to smack them until they don't come back to the food bowl? And that's where I was at. I've been smacked so many times. And it's like, man, I make one small mistake and then they're locking me up again. I make one small mistake, everything that I had built, the progress I had made had been swiped from underneath me, which is part of their strategy. The more I got out, got educated, went to, got involved in nonprofit and some other things. When I interned for some nonprofits in Washington, D.C. and did some other things in college. And so I stared out that window and I'm like, I give up. Like I can't do it. For 90 days, literally, I just laid on my bunk all day long. I just stared at the wall for 90 days. But then, so this is where Patrick Bet-David's Choose Your Enemies Wisely. So this was back in 2016. This is 6 years before he wrote that book. That's why I know that this is like spot on, because that's what I did. In that moment, I'm like, wait, this is what Uncle Sam wants. And so it's like this system was built to break me, to increase the probability of me coming back so they can continue to monetize me. And so it was in that moment, after doing that for so long, that's when my mental fortitude really, really got built. I'm like, I'm not going to let them beat me. I'm like, they're not going to beat me. I'm not going to let this define me. I'm not going to let this break me. And that would be the moment. And so my last incarceration was 3.5 years. And so it was about, that was total 4 months into that sentence that, the mental fortitude, really began being strengthened and bolstered up. And so that's where I say, not everybody comes to that conclusion and that outcome. And so that's where free will, mindset, choices, maybe some of it is, education. There's a huge gap of education and, IQ. But that's not definitive. There are people who are incarcerated. And so that moment right there is, because I can literally brain mark, I gave up. And then 90 days later, I'm like, screw that, I'm not giving up, And before that 3.5 year sentence for a $1,000 theft, before that sentence, the longest I had ever been out was for 3 months, 3 weeks. And total from age 19 to age 28 that I was free was 11.5 months, just under a year total. And now I passed 6 years. I've now been free longer than 6 years. Literally went from 3 months, 3 weeks, past 6 years. And so,
Gosh,
so
man.
but here's another thing too, is prefrontal cortex, man. So my prefrontal cortex got developed while I was in there as well. And so I would say it was about a year before I got out, the way that I perceived things shifted. And that's logic and decision making, playing the tape through, not living so much in the short term as much as being able to see how the short term impacts the long term. And so the average age is 25 for male. I was on the later side. I was at about age 28, 27. So I was a late bloomer. And that right there too played a big part in it as well. So it was an accumulation of that experience, the 20-hour day lockdown had to be broken in order for my mind to respond. You break a bone, then it grows back stronger. It's harder to break it the second time. And that's what life's doing to us constantly. It's breaking us, building back stronger, breaking us, building back stronger. Spiritual warfare only exists where you have vulnerabilities. So anywhere that the spiritual warfare can negatively impact you, that's really a signal that you have a deficit over here, you have a vulnerability over here. So whatever your perception of light is, whether it's relationships, whether it's in business, whether it's in family, being a father, whatever it is, everything that bad happens can only happen because it starts with you. And you put yourself there, you made decisions, you let things slide, you didn't do this, you did this, you didn't, have boundaries. Like whatever it is, like all the negatives in life are really like building for us. Like life works for us, not against us. If you don't choose your starting points, if you don't choose your experiences as a child, and if you read like the what is it, the four agreements,
Mhm.
basically you turn 18 and this identity you have isn't actually your identity. It's what free will as a child has externally embedded in you. So that's where like you're stupid, you can't do this. Oh, doesn't do this, or that's not right. Don't do that. So you basically
Labels.
identify as all these external, humans with their free will influencing you, trying to help you. Um, and so yeah, so it's like, how do I say this? Like you have to experience negatives to get realigned.
Dude, there's so much there again. Like, it's hard for me as a podcast host because there's a million things I want to thread here, but I know we don't have 6 hours. Man, I'm very surprised that your crime created a 23-hour lockdown. I did not even know that was a thing. I thought that was for like hyper dangerous people that could not be, out and about. And so my question to you is like, when you're facing this 90-day, like looking through this hole and you decide to have a bulletproof mindset, I mean, did you have material to read? Could you read stuff? Like what? I mean,
Oh yeah. Yeah, like
okay. So you're
I
still
ended up
able to
reading
like
it.
bring things
Yeah.
in.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, yeah, yeah. Oh, but I mean, I'll just tell you this. Go sit in your bathroom and just imagine being in your bathroom for 23 hours for a whole year.
I can't, dude.
And if you have a hyperactive mind and you're an overthinker, you have ADHD,
Mhm.
just imagine. So obviously humans, we adapt and we acclimate. Some people
Yeah.
adapt better than others do. I adapt really well because I'm a former foster child. I had to do it as a kid. Mom bouncing around trying to figure out how to survive as a young teen. Ended up repeating the same cycles of abuse just to survive, getting with older men. And so like, how do I say this? Like, that's why I say like what's big to me is as big as what's big to you. Because like, how do I say this? I was built to adapt to all of that.
Mm.
I was built to adapt. I can adapt, I think, better than most people can. And so that's
Yeah.
a strength of mine. I learned to be a chameleon. But we had like TVs, man. Like so in prison, like you could rent a TV. So I didn't have it all the time, but I lost it a couple times. But like you can rent TVs. I
I
mean,
don't even know
there's
that.
books you can get. So like obviously everything is correlated to your access to resources or to where you're at. This does not apply to everybody. Like,
Yeah.
60 Days by A&E, 60 Days In. You ever
Uh-huh.
heard of it?
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
So they asked me to be on because they're doing a new twist of formerly incarcerated people. And I said, I would only
Really?
do it if you put me in solitary confinement, 24-hour day lockdown. And they wouldn't do it.
Wait,
Because
what? Wait,
that
wait, wait, wait,
that's
wait. I'm
that's really
confused.
what's bad.
You would you would go back
Yeah.
to
I
prison?
I I told them I would only do your show if you actually show what's really happening. So when I learned about that show, so this is kind of going off, guys, but I'd have to share this,
Yeah. Okay.
is they
Yeah, do it.
choose what they want to show you. They
Of course.
choose what jails to put you in. And so I put them in a position and I was like, I'll go do it, but I want to be in solitary confinement so people can actually see what a good majority of the population goes through instead of just
Whoa.
showing this one little segment of the population. And they wouldn't do it. And so, oh,
Whoa, dude. That is great. That's so wild. Honestly, man, you've opened my eyes to this 23-hour lockdown shindig.
it's
And
even worse. It gets even worse, man. Like I'm telling you, like I only had to do 12 days. And so it's 72-hour lockdown. You come out for 45 minutes every 72 hours. I only had to do it for 12 days. And that's because they were moving me over from population. I pointed out. So I didn't do anything, but I pointed out and they moved me back to max. And so I had to go, while they were waiting for a bed or whatever, I had to go to actual solitary, like full on solitary. And they like chain you like a dog. They chain you and leash you over to the shower, lock you in, and they leash you back out. And you have 45 minutes to either go into your 16 by 12 cage or take a shower. And they put people back there for years, man. They
Dude,
put
you didn't
people
kill
back there for
anybody.
years. No, I'm telling you, it's all psychological warfare, man. It's
Gosh.
it's yeah, but they put people back there for years. And it's a tragedy what they're actually doing to people. And then they release them and they wonder why they end up doing dumb stuff and come back. Because number one, they've
Yeah.
acclimated and they've adapted and they've become their environment. And then they've also basically been in, it's a form of psychological warfare. So then when you put them
Yeah.
back in the real world, they don't know how to handle it. Too much stimulation, too much this, and this,
Sure.
because they put
I
them
was
back
thinking
into these
dopamine
environments.
detox, bro. Like talk about a crazy dopamine detox and then come out in society and just bang, bang, bang. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my
I went
goodness,
off
man. That's
there. Sorry.
no. I think that was that was really useful actually. Gosh, dude. Well, so you were able to read, you were able to watch TV and stuff. Were there like a particular set of books that you're like, oh my goodness, these really helped me with my mental fortitude and really build a bulletproof mindset?
So there are people who are incarcerated that were in environments that cultivated stuff like that. I wasn't in that. I'm with like gangbangers, all these different people. I never got exposed to that. And most people aren't. So when you go in, you only know what you know. So you continue on the starting point that got you in there. Unless you're exposed, which you still, just like if you're the average of the 5 you spend the most time with, you have to have a strong average to actually change a behavior. 99% of prison environments are not that environment. And so I didn't even know to like learn skills. I didn't even think that I would ever be out of that environment. So like I've wasted all that time, man. I wasted all that time. And I look back on it, I'm like, man, I could have gotten really disciplined in there. I could have gotten a lot of those things, but I would read to escape. When I did my 3.5 years, I was so burned out on reading from the previous 4 years that I had done that I didn't read very much. I didn't read very much in those last 3.5 years I did because I'd already read all the series, all the Grishams, Wheel of Time, like all the series. What is the one with the ice wall? I read all the series of books that I could get access to. And so, yeah, there weren't like self-development books that I had access to. And even if I did, it wasn't necessarily in my like, hey, you should read this. My family would send in when I was in a location that I could, they would send in some books. But like, it wasn't ever like conscientiously like, or consciously like, hey, I'm going to read this book on mindset. I'm going to read, this book on the 7 highly effective habits of successful people type of a deal. That was just never in my psyche because I probably would have been in that situation if it had already been there. And so I was basically a 19-year-old from 19 to 28. And so I never really grew past 19 until age 28. And so like even like right now, I'm really only like a 25-year-old,
Wow.
and you stop emotionally developing because you're not stimulated with actual like
People.
like how to say it, like life situations. So
Sure.
that's where like you get frozen. Like you'll meet 45-year-old dudes who've been locked up basically their entire life and they act like teenagers.
Whoa.
But that's a real thing. It's like a scientific thing. Like basically when you go in, you stop emotionally developing because you're
Yeah.
not actually like able to be exposed to those environments, those situations, those relationships, those dynamics that cultivate that development and that, processing. And so that's been when I got out at 28. That was a huge part of my struggle is like I had to grow up. I had to grow up. I'm in an environment where you have to be emotionally reactive. The bigger man does not talk things out. The bigger man does not, avoid conflict. Um, and if you do those things in the wrong manner, you just put a target on your back. And now you got people trying to take your stuff, you know? Um,
Wow.
and so it's a really toxic environment in those senses. And not all prisons are like that. It's just where I was.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Dude. Okay. There's obviously so much there, but I want to know. So you get out at 28. You have the mentality of a 19-year-old. You've been able to overcome at some level, right? But now you walk through those doors, and you mentioned you were homeless. So did that happen immediately, or was it just a result of not being able to function outside of prison?
I mean, homelessness, like when I was in college taking 18 credits, working 70-hour weeks, I was still homeless, sleeping on concrete. I'd ride my motorcycle over to churches because, felons are basically restricted access to housing. A good story to follow is Jelly Rolls. He's like, if Bunny hadn't gotten me housing, I wouldn't even be here. Like, he literally is only where he's at because Bunny was there to help him get housing. So
Wow.
that was one of his biggest barriers. But that's the number one barrier. It's why I live outside of America now, because I got tired of it. You're doing everything right. You're doing all these things right. You still can't get access to housing. I'm pulling 5,200 cash, still getting denied for apartments because it's something I did 8 years ago. That
Mhm.
7-year thing is a myth, by the way. So
Wow.
that's a myth. When I got out, basically for when I got out, I just knew I didn't want to come back. I didn't know how I wasn't going to come back, and I stayed sober for 6 months, and then ended up going and dating a stripper in a casino town. Ended up relapsing. Ended up, with a drug dealer's daughter, two drug dealers' daughters. And ended up on a really slippery slope there. And then when I met my birth mom, it was literally like I was about to go back to prison. Like if I lost my job, phone just got shut off, car is about to get repoed. I'm on the needle doing, methamphetamine. And it's like, I knew myself in that moment. I was like, crap, as soon as this car goes, I have no option but to commit crime. And like, I was trying everything I could to not go down the same path. So like, that's when I just drove cross country to get sober, met my birth mom. I had $13 to my name. Like this is where I started to where I started to experience God. And this is why it's like, you don't need to have what you need. You need to have faith that you can get there. So I had $13 to my name, made it across country, detoxing off drugs in that moment. I had no insurance. I had a suspended license. I got pulled over 2 times and they never asked me for my car insurance. And when they called in my license, even though I had just gotten a ticket a month ago for driving on a suspended license, it came back as valid.
Dude,
No,
that's
I
divine.
promise people this. No, 100%.
Yeah.
Like it gets
Yeah.
wild, man. And so like that's when it really changed because I was about to exactly like hey, I didn't want to go back. But that was the point too where the pain of going backwards was worse than the unfamiliarity of moving forward. And that it took losing those 7+ years of my life. It took all those experiences. When I was 60 days out from getting released from that 3.5-year sentence, there was some racial stuff going on. I'm not a gangbanger, but next thing you know, I got a shank tied to my hand, and I'm like, crap, like I'm 60 days from getting out. Like I
Oh
just want
my
to get out of
gosh.
here. I don't want to, but like it's like you have to fall in line in a certain way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you put yourself in more precarious, positions that could potentially be more dangerous. You got to pick and choose your battles. You don't really choose. Like you have to play within the rules of the environment. And so like all that stuff's flashing. And I just gotten reintroduced with my birth mom on Facebook, just like, 8 months earlier. And so I was like, Mom, I'm coming out to meet you. And I just upped and left. $13, hop Walmart to Walmart. I did these
Oh.
little crowdsourcing app jobs where I'd go into Walmarts and I'd take pictures of all the labels of Monster Energy drinks up at the checkout. And then of that, the back shelf where they got the packs of them, because they were basically auditing Walmarts, but they were doing it through a crowdsourcing app. And so I hopped Walmart to Walmart, no cell phone service, just connected to Walmart's Wi-Fi, getting paid $8 to $14 per Walmart. And that's how I got to meet my birth mom. And like, that was a whole journey right there too. So that's really where it came down to it. But that's why, like, right now, man, it's like, if you knew you couldn't fail and all you had to do was move, not give up, just continue going. Like, what would you do in life? You know, $13. And then I ended up getting the Ohio State University, like everything just from that one decision, man. And I didn't even leave wanting to go to college. I just wanted to not go back to prison. I didn't want my car to get repoed. So I'm like, crap, I got to do something now or I have no way out of Utah. I can't get out, but I don't have my car. And it's just wild how that whole thing dominoed. You know,
So you were in Utah. You go across the country, Walmart to Walmart to Walmart, making just enough money to get there. Like divine things happen to make sure that you get there. You meet your birth mother. Now, was she a changed woman and like ready to receive you? Like why did that change you so much?
It changed me because I needed to see and understand. Like how do I say this? You have to face the demons of your traumas. Sometimes you have to face them head on. So like once I met her, number one, like I used to tell people when I was like, 12 years old, 13 years old, if I saw my birth mom, I'd run her over. And then I look back, I run her over again. But in that moment, when I met her, I got more of the story. I got to just feel empathy for her. So by that time too, like, think about it like this. Like, she's 8 to 13 years old getting raped and sexually abused by her stepdad. Her mom knew, but let it happen. No matter what she did, she wasn't protected by the one she trusted. She's fed drugs. And then I got born as soon as she became like biologically able to have kids, even though the stuff was already happening. And so like how can you hate something like that? And so many times in my addiction, like we're doing drugs and the kid's out on the other side of the door knocking, Mom, I'm hungry. But she'd spent all her money on dope. Literally couldn't feed her own kid. Her kid's crying about being hungry and we're there, doing drugs. So like I've seen what happens to drugs and women and all these different experiences. So like it all like, culminated into this moment of just like, I can't be mad at this woman. And nothing against her, but being taken away is nothing against her or me. It had nothing to do with any of that. It was about a victim of a victim not becoming another victim. And, like you just got to think of all the stuff that happened those 4 years. And so like, basically that's, I'm like, oh, wow. Like, and then there's some, I had a spiritual mentor that came on after that. And I started to be able to label and identify these things. And it's like, wow, God was like, enough is enough. And, obviously as a 4-year-old, 6-year-old, 2-year-old, 1-year-old, you can't comprehend any of that. You're just taking everything as it is with your little puny, baby toddler brain. And, ages 1 through 4 are the most important in the neurological development of a child. Like ages 1 to 4 basically dictate the rest of your life. Like that's where all the stuff that you're fighting today is embedded in, is ages 1 to 4. And so like, it's like everything just, came to that moment. And it was like, yeah, so like it forced me to literally turn everything upside down. And it was from that moment on that basically the bondages that were associated to that childhood version of myself were broken. And it was 8 months after that I put down drugs. I started the Ohio State University smoking crack. I was living in a homeless shelter. I was on crutches, waiting for knee surgery, how to get approved for Medicaid because I couldn't work because I was on crutches, waiting for meniscus surgery. Stayed sober for 2.5 months. And finally I broke. I mean, you can only live with crackheads so long until you start smoking crack. So like your environment literally dictates everything, because it doesn't matter how strong you are, eventually you become your environment. And then, God pulled me out. I got a 3.3 GPA that semester smoking crack. And 2/3 in, God got me out of it. I would go crutch my way, smoke crack, go sign in on, because it was during COVID, to the digital classes. And so like, yeah, that's it gets wild, man. But yeah, I kind of went
It
off on
hasn't
that.
gotten wild already, Ty? This is dude,
God is
unbelievable.
good, man. All I can say is God is so
Man.
good. Even when I
Yeah.
was at that homeless shelter and I would go to a church. Every time I've been homeless, and like when I told you I'm taking 18 credits in college, I'm working 70-hour weeks at graveyard so I can save up money. Still couldn't get housing. Obviously, I didn't want to waste my money on hotels because that burns money really fast. And I'm
Mhm.
not making $1 billion. I would go to churches. And guess what? I go to different denominations. So I would be led to churches, LDS, Baptist, non-denominational. And that's why now I have the kind of perspective I have is because I'm like, I was led to all the above, So like
Mhm.
I don't believe this whole like this one's holier than thou, this one's holier than thou. Because I'm like, God led me everywhere, man. It's always churches, man. I would connect to
Uh,
Wi-Fi, hooked on crack, and take my classes, do my homework, and,
yeah,
and whatnot. But if you show up, God will show you out. That's like the ultimate lesson of that is if you show
yeah,
up, God will show you out. And it doesn't mean just show you out on day one. I had to go through 2/3 of that semester. I had to go for 2/3 of that semester until God pulled me out. And since he pulled me out, I've never gone back. So I think a lot of people's expectations of like God, whatever your belief is that like everything's like this. And well, it's like, how bad do you want it? Like if your decisions got you here, well, what are you going to do to show that you want to be over here?
yeah,
Some things are instant, but most things it's like like, obviously you're not like judged by your works, but your works are going to dictate kind of the pathway that will be made in front of you. In a lot of cases to escape where you're at right now. So yeah, that was a lot to unpack.
no, man, it's so good. It really is good, and obviously hearing more of you like, okay, the very beginning of this podcast, you start talking about how like, oh, hey, whatever, all these all these different versions of religion, you're cool with it. And in my mind, I'm like, well, I would disagree with that. Now, it doesn't mean I still don't disagree with you, but we have vastly different life experiences. And so for you to believe that and me to believe what I believe, like obviously that's been shaped by how we've grown up, all the things. How do you reconcile with religion now, knowing that some people will say like, oh, okay, every like God is here and every religion will lead to him, right? But then in specific Christianity, which I know you've talked about, Christianity says Jesus says like I'm not a way, I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. And the only way to heaven and to the Father is through me. How do you reconcile with a statement like that? Do you yeah.
I agree with it. I mean, that's my personal choice. So, like,
Mhm.
I've gone everything from like Scientology, Christian Science. I've seen women preach. I went to over 9 different religions and I studied sociology of religion in college. And I still came that Christ is the way. But the way I take it too is like, I follow Christ, not religion, not man.
Sure.
I follow Christ. And at the same time, that's my belief and my understanding. And like I was saying before, like I've seen people with the universe literally go from darker spots than I am to higher highs than even I am at. I've seen people from Allah start from the bottom of the pit and go up into that. And so the way about it, I guess, is like I have my beliefs, but I don't really believe in like Christian crusade style, like believe what I believe, or I'm gonna kill you. I'm not really like I'm not that kind of Christian,
Mhm.
but that's my interpretation based on my experiences. But I also don't discount the miracles that I have seen. And so one of the things that I always keep in mind is number one, the Bible is in story form because that's how humans best connect with anything is through stories. And so just knowing that tells me that I don't know everything. And so and so like I always keep that in my mind. It's like I'm just a human. Um, I can only control myself. I've seen miracles through all facets of different beliefs, and I have my own belief. I have my own interpretation, And so it's like, how do I say this? I can only lean into my own interpretation. And so, by the same time, I'm also open just because when you see what I've seen and you've seen people like worse lows, like people I never thought would get sober. The girl that first, I got my first overdose from this one girl, and she's the reason I went to college. She's the reason I was like, hey, if I go to college, I saw her go from this low to this, and she's a universe person. She's into all that, and her life would, and now she's living a life that she never imagined living. And so but I can repeat that across so many different people. And so it puts me in a interesting position, but that position also has nothing to do with my interpretation because, for me, if the world would embody Christ and if the world would be Christ-like, everything that we experience from a social level to everything would basically be eradicated. And I believe that to my core and to my soul. And so Christ literally is the answer. We need Christ in everything. We need, you know, I mean, America needs America needs Jesus.
Yeah.
America needs
Yeah.
Jesus. The justice system needs Jesus. Forgiveness. A big part of my story is forgiveness. I had to forgive my birth mom. I had to forgive my ex who lied in front of a federal grand jury to get me indicted to save her and her new boyfriend's butt. And and the thing about that too is literally everything Jesus teaches is the only way forward. I had to go through those moments of forgiveness. Like when I talked to you about, the first 5 years out, I'm now past 6. That first 5 years, I was victim. I was victim Tyler, this isn't fair. I shouldn't have done this. But then it's like, well, what were you doing when that stuff happened? What was the outcome? Who did you become from the trials? Who would you be if you hadn't gone through those things? So why aren't you grateful for it? It's just like every time I battle with God right now about my last year of isolation, what happened? Like it flashbacks to all the lessons I've learned. And it's like, have you not learned more because of it? And so, like, uh, whatever your belief is, for me, God, we're just players in the game, man.
No, dude, that's fascinating. My honest rebuttal to that would be that biblically, Christianity would explain that good things would happen to people who were into other religions because that's the way that the devil deceives. He's like, hey, I'll give you the world, like I'll show you this works. And in the Christian life, we're not promised a life free from suffering, and happiness is not circumstantial, right? We are joyful in all circumstances. And there's a lot there. Maybe something we could talk about off the podcast, because I want to pivot to. There's still so much more of your story. Like I'm interested how you got to Ohio, all the things. I'm actually from Dayton. I grew up in Dayton.
Okay.
Yeah,
Columbus is where I was living at. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, are you familiar with Ohio Christian University by chance?
No.
It's like 35 minutes south of Columbus. That's where I went to college. Yeah. So wild, right? So you end up in Ohio. Okay. Now let's get into you finding AI. Why? I mean, was that like the thing, or did you have other jobs and you're like, wow, AI is interesting? You're great at this, man. Like, obviously you run a successful cold email AI company. You probably have a lot more where that came from that you can expand on. But I mean, what got you obsessed with automation and AI and all the things you're doing now?
So I dropped out of college. So when GPT-3 came out, I dropped out of college 2 weeks later. When I wrote an entire essay with AI, I was like, oh yeah, this is a pointless degree. There's no reason to keep going in this. And then I had just been taking Grant Cardone's 10X marketing, Coursera's Google and e-commerce marketing, because I had started to get exposed to Grant Cardone. So I'm big on like I owe Grant Cardone a lot for the information that that was exposed to me during that time. And so it's like, and then the other thing too is at the same time too, like the economy is basically we're in the silent depression. It's in not a very good condition. As much people want to, sugarcoat it, it's actually pretty bad. And marketing is the number one thing that businesses need more than ever during economic turbulence. And so that was basically learning in college, taking my classes, doing all that. Then AI came out, and I'm like, okay, it's time to pivot. This isn't going to matter. And turns out now AI knowledge is actually more valuable than a college degree. Imagine that 2 years later. And so that's when that started. I ended up homeless, 3 months after dropping out. It was only for 5 days. Literally failed, limiting beliefs. You got to think about it. For years of my life, I only made 15 cents an hour. Just asking someone for $850 for, copywriting services and writing blogs, like I couldn't even do it. And so I wasn't asking for money. And so like I had to go through this whole period of that. And like now, like my largest collected at once is 15,000. So I went from not being able to ask for $850 to asking for 15,000. That was a journey of limiting beliefs and of, identity. And so basically it started with funnels, Google Business, SEO, copywriting, ClickFunnels, go high level, review management. Like I hit the whole thing. But then, people started telling me like, what are you doing now? Like, I don't even know what to associate you with. You're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. And so basically one of my clients said, hey, I got this list. I want to email these dentists. Like, what can we do? Or I want to get a hold of these dentists. And then that's where I learned about cold email. And then obviously that's, 8 months after GPT came out. And so it's just kind of a snowball effect of, evolving. Just like when I dropped out of college, I'm like, crap, I need to pivot. It's a good thing I did. And so it was the same concept with that cold email, like the rules that worked for deliverability, the strategies that worked, the simplicity of it when I started is nothing like it is now. It is literally 10 times harder in just, a year and 10 months of doing cold email. It's literally 10 times plus harder. It's more saturated. Barrier of entry has been removed. Deliverability is harder than ever. Google's got Gemini. Microsoft's got OpenAI. So like they have all these powerhouses on the back end. So they're able to pick up on things much more easily than previously they could. And so just the natural effect of being able to get into inboxes, stand out, personalization, granular positioning, data aggregation, and cold email has become really technical now. So it's like the best way to look at cold email is AI, APIs, and then automations. Like you got to connect to different softwares, databases, enrichment processes, all these different things just to now get this one outcome. And it wasn't like that when I started. So it was just the natural evolution of it. Like AI is everything now. Like, I mean, just like, how do I say this? Just 2 months ago, you've had to go use Flux and do all this, a lot more complicated just to get a cool image or a meme that might have good text on it. Now you just go to GPT and say, hey, make me a meme that says this. This is my overall, message. And it'll just do everything. And it's perfect text, all of that. And so just the natural evolution of everything has been AI. 2023, I cloned my first client with HeyGen. 2023, I cloned the first voice with 11 Labs and playing with some other technologies. And so like, it doesn't matter what it is in the digital realm. Everything is being AI-ified. And then when you're running a business and you're looking at processes and systems and strategies, and how much do you value your time? How much time do you actually have available? What is your capacity with those two put together? The only answer is AI and automations. And it's just gotten easier, and easier. GPT-3 is nothing compared to what's out now. And so anyone in marketing has to have evolved with AI. And so that's really the journey is I didn't have a choice. And I was a little slow to the AI game with cold email. But luckily the right people got put in front of me and then finally clicked. I'm like, hey, I better I better
Yeah.
move to this new way of doing things. And yeah, so that's the journey. It's nothing super special or fancy, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So now you're a one-man team and you run an entire AI company and you have clients from the US, but you live in Vietnam?
Yeah. Yeah. So first it was Mexico because I just wanted housing. When I left America, I was only making 2K a month. And then, I ended up passing six figures last year. And so I started, like, when I left, once again, I didn't have what I needed. That still small voice told me, you need to leave America. And then what happened? I got housing, all these monkeys on my back got removed.
Yeah.
I got PTSD from America. Like, America gives me PTSD because it's like,
Wow.
man, like, even when you're doing everything right, still can't get housing. You're doing everything right, still can't get that job. So it's not, those things work out for you. Once again, these things build you. They force
Yeah.
you to think differently. They force you to build differently. If I'd have been able to go get a cushy job that paid decent, I wouldn't be in AI right now. So I basically be on, my value would be declining. Like, everything works out in the end. And so, but it's biblically, it's actually biblical. So it's the land of unbelief. So the ultimate thing that had to happen is I had to leave the land of unbelief. And at the same time, too, is I was fortifying this identity because society was telling me, you're not good enough for housing. You don't deserve housing. Obviously, I'm going through all these economic, hardships because
Yeah.
I didn't understand the value that I actually brought. But I'm constantly being, compressed by society to validate that. And then internally, I was revalidating it.
Yeah.
And it was until I left that I was able to break away from all that noise, go on my own little journey. And it's like 34 days after moving out of the US, I got housing in my name for the first time since 2009. And so I'd already been out of prison for 5 years at that time. And I couldn't get housing in my name, no matter what I was doing.
All
And
because of your
so,
record.
yep. And so it's like 34 days later, boom, got housing. I'm out
Yeah.
here in Vietnam. They don't care what you did 10 years ago. They're like, you got money? Cool. We got housing for
Yeah.
you. But America's not like that. The country with $34 trillion in debt tells you that you need to have good credit.
Interesting, right?
So it's really
Dude.
backwards.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I started in Mexico. I left only making 2K a month with business expenses, so I didn't have a lot. But once again, it's a lot cheaper to live in other countries. And, so I was like 2 months, it was 2K, 3K, 9K, 10K, 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 20K. And like, so there was this evolution of leaving the land of unbelief, confidence in self, removal from the PTSD, societal, validation, constant validation, lower cost of living, um, and just finding yourself. So like finding yourself is probably one of the biggest things because sometimes you got to leave. You got to leave that normal to find yourself. Because like I said, like your environment is validating all these different things. Unless you can break away from all the noise, you can't
Sure.
actually see through it. And so,
Sure.
that was, yeah. So it's like, it's been my own little journey and it's been a business journey, but it's been, this is your starting point, Ty. Let's get you to a new starting point. And,
Yeah.
all glory to God and then community. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
here without the community, the people that have supported me. People are like, yeah, I want to work with you. I want to support you. I want to be part of the tribe. Like I'm nothing without these people. Like it's not
Yeah.
me. I made so many mistakes this past year. I've done coaching wrong. I've done for you wrong. I've succeeded and I have failed. And
Right.
once again, if it weren't for the grace of God, if it weren't for the supportive community, like I wouldn't even be okay right now. And so that's just an important thing to put in that. And so I think it's
Yeah.
pretty humbling in a sense to realize like, how do I say this? Whenever you get stuck in ego, just realize that it's not you.
Man, well said. Well said, man. So I can attest to what you're saying because my business didn't really start to explode until we moved away from comfort. Because I was in Ohio and then we moved to North Carolina, which was away from community, away from all the things that we knew. And I was able to just lock in and get super, super focused. And so, yeah, man, on a smaller level, I can certainly attest to what you're saying as far as moving away from that. Um, Let me pivot back to AI real fast. I have some tough questions for you. You're an
Sure.
AI guy, so you understand a lot. Here's my concern with AI. As an entrepreneur, of course, I use AI. I want things to move quicker. I want them to be more efficient. I'm big on the inputs I put into it, creating strong outputs that are me. Like I'm not going to sit there and just like use AI for all my social posts, like just hey, blah blah blah. No, I'm going to put me into it. Right now, here's my concern: is the dehumanization of where we go from here. Right. So, for instance, I'm a podcast host. I make a full-time income as a podcast host, as a podcaster in the podcast space. I could be taken aw I could be taken over by AI. However, my human experience, like the actual true insights of my life won't be available anymore. But people could certainly create AI hosts and all the things. So, where do you draw the line, man, before continuing down this road?
It's different for everybody. You are absolutely right. Like that's why we use AI in cold email is because we're able to add that humanization element to the personalization, the data and the positioning that we use. Um, I mean, more than ever now, people's bots are talking to bots. You text message somebody for something, it's going to be a bot. How long until it's bots fully talking to bots? Think about like, AI agents now and swarm agents running businesses. Like, where does that put B2B in the future? Like
Yeah.
where does AI stop and human begin? Um, and there's a lot of people in podcasting that have gone to full clones, but it works for what they're doing. They don't
Yeah.
interview people, but now they have just continued what they were doing, trained it, fed it their cloned voice. Obviously, you nailed it. It has to be you. It's just like content. It's got to have your story. It's got to have the tonality in which you speak in. You need to feed it previous, content that you have written so it can match your style. You can't just, how do I say this? You're just going to get a generic prompt unless you give it the context and you train it on the different
Always.
informations. And it's never going to
Yep.
be able to position what you say from a personal standpoint. So it's more like a, hey, talking to your, doing voice to text or like voice chat type of a deal, and speaking with it and talking through your thoughts, and then having it ideate and output what it would say, but it's already
Yeah.
been conversing with you and getting to know you. Like my AI now knows that I'm ex addict,
Mhm.
ex convict, all these different things. It's been compiling my stories. I'm having help me write a book right now, so like it's got all
Awesome.
sorts of stuff on me now. And so I
Yeah.
can, pilfer into that for anything like that. And so that's really like, I think you nailed it is when you do use it, it's got to be, you know, tuned, got to be tuned up and given
Sure.
context. But I mean, video, you're not going to be able to tell soon. You're going to be within the
Which
next
is
2 years.
messed up.
No, you're thousand
Don't you think
percent
it's messed
right.
up?
Well,
But
imagine
all
you're
right.
going to be on a sales call in 2 years. You're going to be on a
I know.
sales call on a Zoom,
I
and you're
know.
not even going to know that it's a real person, but it's their closer version of themselves that
I
does the
know.
job better than they would, and it's going to be closing the deal for them. But you're never going to
Okay.
know.
So let me ask you this, right? So I so one of the core human needs that people don't realize to actually fulfill them is contribution, right? So let's say we all just start automating everything. It's all AI. I have AI salespeople, AI this, AI that, AI that, and I build this monster business. And I have tons of money because I my margins are incredible, right? But I don't have a way to contribute because everyone's doing the same thing. So now robots are running all the businesses. And look, I'm all for the entitled a hole at McDonald's to be like, I should make $25 a burger. Like that's ridiculous. Okay. No, your income is correlated to the problems you solve, right? Like as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, come on, bro, right? Make a burger, go solve bigger problems, you'll make more money. Okay. I'm all for replacing the entitled people. Okay. But I'm not. I'm trying to draw a line in my mind early. And that's why I want to have this conversation with you, a guy who's killing it. I'm trying to draw that line in my mind early and say, like, I will never replace face to face human interaction, because at that point, I think we're falling into the dehumanization tactics, and we already have, abortion, and we already have all the things of like, just lower the population. I have 6 kids. What, the carbon footprint on the earth is too great because of my kids? Screw that, bro. You know what I mean? So like, help me as a guy who's killing it in this space. Like, is there merit to what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, 1,000%. How do I say this? I have a very not doomy and gloomy, but I would say very logical. As the speed of innovation right now is so fast, obviously there's a gap between adoption and innovation. But I think that we're going to see levels of increased adoption at rates that historically we have never experienced, because all the previous data is not premised on a digital foundation. So if you look at like the Industrial Revolution, they were restricted by the ability to production.
Yeah.
Say now
Capacity.
we got robots building robots running
Yeah.
24/7. So like the amplification and the speed of the amplification and the technology that helps speed up the amplification of whatever is being, put out, the increased speed to market, all these different things. Elon Musk building his whole server thing in 19 days that usually takes like, 10 months for these other companies to do. Like hit the goal of having, more robots than humans by 2040. So there's 8 billion people. They're saying, hey, we want 10 billion robots by 2040. And then you got to think about this. You take into the socioeconomics. Like, the thing about it is, it doesn't matter what a technology is. If you don't have the mindset and the education to have like to comprehend how you would actually use that in your life, most people aren't actually going to benefit from it. And then you got Neuralink coming out right now. And so we're in the era of human augmentation. So CRISPR-Cas9 by Jennifer Doudna in 2012 unlocked the genetic Pandora's box. Now they've already solved for translating your brain waves into a language technology can comprehend. So now they have people who are paraplegic, paralyzed, communicating with technology through their thoughts. Now they just filed a patent for chip-to-chip telepathic communication. So now they're going to take that same, take the brainwaves, and they're going to emit it to another chip. And what's going to happen for that stuff too is just like, if you don't have it, how can you compete in the market? Just like right now, how many people aren't being hired because they have an AI employee, they've got an AI chatbot, they got an AI receptionist. And so that's like what's been big right now is more like the phase of negating a future hire. But now we're getting into the phase of replacing current hires.
Replacing people that need to eat, bro.
100%. And so like,
my gosh,
that it's not like doom and gloom everything, but like look at the national debt spending. We're at the highest levels of debt, credit card usage. We are at the highest level of like, I guess it's like multifamily. Like, I don't know the specifics, but like a lot of people, like over 6 million of whatever this thing is, are behind on their mortgages. And like all this stuff is catching up while technology is doing this leap in this thing, and the value that one brings to the market. So a lot of people now are actually that McDonald's burger flipper. They used to be useful. Now they're on the same level as a McDonald's burger flipper because they're slower. They're not as, memory efficient. They don't run 24/7. They can't respond immediately. And so like, even though like, how would you say it? Like quality and output isn't necessarily at the same as a human in a lot of cases when it comes to like person to person type stuff. It's getting there. The voice callers, all these different things. Like, you're not going to know what's real soon. You're not going to know when you watch a podcast, is this a real person? Like right now you can see this stuff. So it's really easy.
Yeah.
They always have like the bobblehead thing.
And you can see the mouth and stuff.
Yeah. But even that stuff's getting better. And so like in 5 years, we're going to live in a world where you don't know what to believe. I just made a fake image of me in the Oval Office with Elon Musk and Donald Trump. like obviously if you look at it, you're like, okay, that's not Donald Trump. That guy's face looks a little skewed right here. Like, how long?
Yeah.
Okay.
So here's my question. dude. Oh, so this is so deep. Here's why. Okay. I'll be honest with you. As an entrepreneur who's been an entrepreneur who has had his brain broken to be able to know, like, okay, I know how to make money. Like, period, point blank. My family will never go hungry because I have the skills to make money. Right. And knowing the fundamentals that are important to communicate and to persuade healthfully and all the things. Okay. When I walk into a Walmart, I'm just going to shoot you straight. When I walk into a Walmart and I see people who are just like accepting this life of just like dopamine addiction, unhealthy, all the things. And I'm not judging them, bro. But what I'm doing is I'm just like, you don't know. Like, you don't know what's available for you. Like, you're missing what's out there. I oftentimes think of that with people who have a job. I'm just like, I'm not saying everyone should be an entrepreneur, but I am saying you're missing the point. Like, if you're a man, you're built to expand. You're built to continue to grow all the things. The thing that's so scary about AI to me, and everything you just said, I'm kind of relating it back to your story. When you're sitting in the cell and you're like, dude, I've been in there for 90 days. I'm staring through this hole, like, and I don't know how to break out of this. Like, it broke your brain, right?
Yeah.
Well, now guys and gals now have this challenge with AI of being like, well, wait a second. So obviously AI doesn't have a baby waking them up in the middle of the night. They don't have depression. They don't have all these things I'm going to have. So they are going to perform at a better level than me. What can I do now to stay on pace with AI and prepare myself for being overtaken? Because it's going to freaking happen, bro. To prepare myself for being overtaken. Is it just a matter of like,
You won't be overtaken. You won't be overtaken. You're building a
okay,
business based on relationships. You're building a
okay,
business because here's another thing, another element. If people do business with people, but
yeah,
it's everything outside of it. So it's the extensions of the people doing business with people. If I do business with you, I'm not doing business with your executive assistant. I'm not
sure,
doing business with your CMO, your CFO, your CTO. I'm doing business with you. It's the CEO, the CFO, the CTO, the executive assistant that are going to get replaced. So
yeah,
if you are at the top, you are still safe because businesses do business with people. And so even if we're run by AI, we're still communicating with the top. There's just going to be less people in the middle of the chain of command than
right,
before. So like you're safe, man. Whatever it is you're doing, because you're going to evolve with it. So if anything, you're going to get more efficient. You're going to be able to speed up to production and do different things, and you're going to be able to multiply your outputs, and if not anything, make more money. And
okay.
so,
So
and
what
and
about my
and
friends
to
though? What about my
oh,
friends
so,
who make like $70,000 a year and they work for this company that could literally drop them in a hot second and they believed
oh
like they got to
yeah,
put their 2 weeks in notice, blah, blah, blah. And and they're constantly waiting for recruiters to just pay them another $5,000. And I made six figures. Well, six figures is 60 grand now in the United States. Like,
yep,
good God. Like, it stresses me out, man, because I'm like, dude, I love you guys. Like, see the light.
yeah. Well, how do I say this? One of the problems I have with with AI is it's like you learn at AI, say you're an employee, you have a job, as you say, and you learn AI. You don't get paid more for knowing AI. You just have more perceived value in the market.
Sure.
So you're basically learning, maybe not as comprehensively AI, but you're not actually adding value to yourself. And that already signals a mindset problem. So just like the employee mindset versus the entrepreneur side mindset, fixed mindset versus growth mindset. And so there's nothing that you can really do unless they are unless they have some sort of a mindset shift. Because if you go work for somebody, like you're doing it because your mind tells you that it's the safer option. If you go and you start a business, your mind does it not because it's the safer option, but because it's the more, outcome freedom, infinite scaling. Like there's less restrictions, but it's
Yeah.
obviously everyone who starts like, oh wow, this is 10 times harder than I thought it was going to be. You know.
Brutal.
But now what's happening is it's actually more dangerous to be the employee. It's more dangerous to be the employee than to go and jump on your own wagon, learn these new skills. But here's the thing. Because of AI, it's actually increased the opportunity. So right now, there is more opportunity for anybody. It doesn't matter what your job is. You take that job. In consults with people, I say, hey, what were you doing before? Okay, how can you AIify that? So it doesn't matter what you were doing, if you were an accountant, if you were a tax thing, if you were a secretary, like it doesn't matter what it is. Take what you're doing, apply AI to what you're doing, and now you can go to the market with an AI solution and AI value. And you're going to have comprehensive, you're going to have like your ability to comprehend a solution is going to be greater than someone like me. If I'm trying to replace something that I don't even understand, the person who does understand it is going to be able to do, from a fundamental standpoint, they're going to be able to do a better job. And they're going to understand the nuances, the value propositions brought to the market to be able to, stand out, create a better product. They're going to know how to leverage it. They're going to understand the nuances, the pain points, the efficiencies, so whatever it is, in a way that someone who's never done it can't actually comprehend it. So everybody, an employee standpoint, he's look at it like that. Like, okay, this is what I'm doing now. How does AI fit into this? And then how can I secure my position in the market by combining these two? And you don't have to quit your job. You start AI-ifying it, build it up so you're protected in your current position more so than if you weren't. And then start looking to how you can actually, tangibly bring value to the market by combining those two. That's where I think the best leverage is. But at the same time, too, anyone can go start a voice AI thing, start it on the side, start playing with these little things on your free time. But like Alex Hormozi says, you're going to have to work your 5 to 9. So it's not like it's going to be easy, because that's why people who have jobs are so behind, is because they're so overwhelmed with their daily duties. They can't skip this and move this to this and do this to here. They're already overworked, underpaid. They got the kids at home. They got all this other stuff. So it's hard to get ahead in a way with someone who can be like, hey, you know what? I'm going to take a hit right now on my income, but I'm going to be able to position myself over to here. But I can still do this, and this. Like, I'm just saying, with entrepreneur stuff, you have more flexibility. Like for me right now, I pulled back and I've been focusing on a whole bunch of different things, fortifying, building products, solving problems that didn't exist. So I can bring them to the market, doing all these things, but also living in the country, And so that's the whole thing about it, is people are so capacity, deficient from their 9 to 5.
And monstrously distracted, man. Like it's literally dopamine versus algorithms that are like multi-billion-dollar created algorithms. It's like you're going to lose every time. And so you got someone who's taking the kids to school, going to work, doing their duties, and then listening to a podcast while they're working, which is taking their brain waves, and then on social media, and then dopamine addicted and food addicted and all the things. It's like, no wonder. But the problem is, life used to be simple, and now people are like, well, shoot. People who have jobs need to realize life will never be simple again. Like you have to pivot, or you will be at the mercy of those who do.
Yep. Oh yeah,
dude.
But that's not. But I just had to emphasize this.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity. And that's where the mindset of employee versus entrepreneur is, the ability to see opportunities. The JOB has a hard time seeing opportunities in problems when it comes to these kinds of innovations, because they're already put themselves in this box. I can only make 70,000 a year. I don't dare ask for a raise. I don't dare do this. I don't dare ask for a week off because, my boss did it. So they're silenced in many different ways. But if they can just see that there is opportunity in the disruption right now, that everything that is happening can be basically shifted and used as a driver for them to get out of their current circumstance. That's where I think the mindset shift is the most, that's what needs to happen. But that's also the biggest point of friction, because two different mindsets.
Yeah. Dude, there's so much there. I don't want to land this plane yet, but we're going to have to, due to time. I want to be respectful of your time. I've got some meetings coming up as well. Dude, this has been a beyond fascinating conversation, from your story to all the things you know about AI to just the tidbits of conversation we've gotten. I mean, there's so many life principles that you've taught here. You have seen life through such a different lens as to other people. And I think anybody that came into this podcast with any type of a victim mentality, even though you've said you've had it as well, but I think you could, to be honest, in relation to many of us. I think people are like, whoa, like there is a path forward. And so, man, for that, obviously, thank you for sharing your story. As we land this plane, Ty, this is called the price of success. Look, man, what has the price of success been? Not prior to, because I don't think you paid that price willingly. But ever since you've gotten out, right? Ever since you've gotten out, I'm going to twist the question a little bit on you. What's the price of success been for what you've accomplished since getting out? What have you sacrificed? What has it taken? What has the price been?
Everything. I had to leave my own country. I had to leave my family. I had to put progression over familiarity and comfort. Been willing to sacrifice, a lot of things. And the best way to put it is like consistently dying unto yourself. Like that's the key, because what got you here won't get you there. And so you have to be willing to consistently go through that, death and rebirth, death and rebirth, death and rebirth, to continue to escalate your evolution, and your path towards self-actualization. And so that I mean, yeah, like you've got to be able, like you have to first understand the price that is going to be required for the life you want to live, and then you have to be willing to pay it. And
Yeah.
not everybody's positioned the same way to pay those same prices. And the prices paid may be the same price, but 10 times more uncomfortable for one person than another person. So for
Yeah.
me, I'm blessed because I'm just by myself. So I'm able to pay these prices knowing that it only impacts me. And so that's now where it's turned into a pro and an advantage right now is I can put it all on the line, and I've always slept on concrete, man. Like I got nothing
Yeah.
to lose. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so that'd be my answer for that.
Wow, dude. Look, man, the data tells us you should be 6 feet in the ground right now. Like everything you've been through, man, it's incredible that you are on this podcast telling your story. Gosh, man, like obviously God has redeemed your life. So many amazing things are happening. I know people are better off knowing you. And so with that, man, tell people please, where can they find you, see your social media posts, all the things you post, like such great stuff, man. So yeah, just please take the floor and tell people how they can connect with you.
Yeah, it's Shane Howell. Facebook, LinkedIn. Those are my main two platforms. Yeah, I think that, yeah, I should have put Ty-Shane Howell for my placeholder. So
Hey man, it's all
but
good.
yeah.
It's all, well, and then your AI business, obviously business owners are going to be listening to this as well. They're like, hey man, I like this guy. He seems like he can help me. How would people find you?
So 10xcoldleads.com, or by the time they hear this, my next transition is 10x AI advisory.
Cool.
And so but 10x cold leads primarily the best one.
Okay. Okay. Ty, thank you, man, for coming on The Price of Success. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. You're an amazing host. Thank you.